Adam had Cain and Abel, and Yahweh came back to check on his offerings one day. And, you know, one was bringing him the harvest, one was bringing him the lamb, and one got jealous because he kept taking the harvest. And he's like, you know what, I'm pissed off, I'm gonna kill my brother, right? So Cain kills Abel, and God comes back like he doesn't know this. He's supposed to be all-knowing and omnipotent, but he doesn't know that this happened. He's shocked that this happens. And he says, I gotta kick you out of the garden. And so Cain says in the Bible, he says, the people out there will kill me. But what people?
I thought there's no people.
I thought there was no people out there. There's people out there already. Matter of fact, they might be barbaric. So he says, don't worry, I will put my mark on you. See, that's the brand. Put my brand on you. So he said, so that they will know your minds. So he put a brand on and let people know, hey, no, that's Enlil's guy. Don't mess with him. Exactly. That started the whole Canaanites. See? That's where the Canaanites came out and built the whole thing and eventually migrated over to Mesoamerica.
Things that make you go, Well, many people often ask me, what do I think about Billy Carson? And oftentimes I have to tell them that I am 50-50 on Billy Carson. And this video is a perfect example of why I am 50-50 on Billy Carson. He has evidently studied a lot of the Sumerian tablets, the Babylonian culture, the Assyrian, the Akkadians, and to a certain degree, the biblical Israelites. But it is videos like this where there are blatant things that are just incorrect that I am 50-50 on Billy Carson, because I don't understand how he can make some of his justifications. And this is such one. The first part of this video where he was talking about Cain and Abel, you know, making their offerings to this God Yahweh. Okay, Yahweh being Enlil. I will 100%, I am in agreement that Yahweh is patterned after Enlil. If not, Yahweh is Enlil. Especially when you look at the fact of how Yahweh specifically recruited Abraham, and how in Deuteronomy, I believe 25, it explicitly says that Elion gave the Israelites as Yahweh's portion. But in his version of the story here, he says that Cain and Abel made their offerings. The God start taking the offerings of Abel. Cain kills Abel, and he's acts as if he's surprised. Now, he wasn't surprised because he told Cain prior to Cain killing Abel that sin crouches at your door and you have the power to overcome it. So therefore, Cain, he was telling Cain, like, I know what you're thinking, but you got the power to overcome this, so don't do it. But Cain goes and does it anyway. Billy's first mistake, he says that, well, now I got to kick you out of the garden. You see, in the story of Genesis, Adam and Eve disobeyed this God by eating a fruit that they were not supposed to eat from the tree of knowledge. And then after that, after they were found out by this deity as if he didn't know, he kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden. Cain and Abel have not been born yet. So therefore, Cain and Abel were not kicked out of the garden. They were already out of the garden. And there are different people say different reasons as to why Cain's fruit wasn't appealing to this God instead of the barbecue of the slain blood of the lambs and goats and stuff that Abel offered. It could have been this own God's fault. If you remember this biblical story, he tells Adam that you will have to sweat by your brow to get from the land, and the land will not be that loving towards you. It will be hard. So maybe the fruit that Cain was producing wasn't that great. It's kind of like we had a drought when I lived in Florida for 1 year, and the oranges that my orange trees produced and my grapefruit trees produced their grapefruit, it wasn't as sweet as the previous years. It wasn't as good. So maybe he had some substandard fruit. He had that, I'm back in Georgia right now. He had that Food Depot fruit instead of that Publix or that Whole Food fruit. And so this guy was like, nah, I'll take that blood over there. Give me that barbecue that Abel and I put together. But anyway, Cain was already out of the garden, already kicked out. Cain never knew the garden, was never part of the garden story. Adam and Eve had already been kicked out, so you would think that he would know this part. Then the other aspects that he goes on and talks about how Cain gets the mark, and that part is accurate, and that people are going to be out there and killing him. And the question is, who are these people? Like, And many people like to just say that it's his brothers and sisters that are an untold number of children that was birthed by Adam and Eve after it. But initially it says that Adam and Eve, to replace Cain, they had Seth. And then after that, they had many sons and daughters. But Cain leaves prior to this so-called birthing of an unnamed number of children. And he goes into the land of Nod, which is already known, and finds himself a wife and builds a city. So although the Bible doesn't mention any of the children being born where Cain and Abel were alive, it says that Seth was born in replacement. There could have been more children that was born, more daughters who were born, and Seth was born to be the replacement of Abel. So if you looked at it that way, logically, you would have to say that they had nothing but daughters until Cain killed Abel, and then the next son that is born is Seth, who replaces Abel. Or you can say there were other sons and daughters, and just because this was the next son that's born after Abel was murdered, then Seth was the replacement for Abel. There are many different ways you can look at it, but it's personal extrapolations depending upon how you want to look at it, because it doesn't specifically say. It just goes on to Seth and then talks about many sons and daughters. So either he married his sister, or those people who were created on the sixth day who were outside of the garden, all the men and women who were created at the exact same time and then told to dominate the earth, it was them. One of them. So he kills it. So he goes and marries some woman, builds a city. Now, where he makes the next mistake is that he proclaims that Cain then built the city, had his lineage, and that's where the Canaanites come from. And then they later went to Mesoamerica. You can't be even further from the truth of what this Bible says, and not that the Bible is the truth, but the truth of what the Bible says, if you understand what I'm saying. The reason why I say it that way, because according to this book, Cain goes and he has his line, Tubal Cain, all them people. Seth goes and has his line, Enoch, Methuselah, and all his people. Then out of Seth's line comes Noah. Noah is the one with the ark and has 3 kids, and all the kids, everybody on the planet supposedly dies. So that would mean Cain's entire line died. And therefore, none of Cain's progenitors are there. None of them. So they could not have started the Canaanites. According to this Bible, I believe it is the children of Ham. Yeah, Ham is the progenitor of the Canaanites, because out of Ham comes one of his sons named Canaan, and Canaan is the progenitor of the Canaanites. So he was so very incorrect in that one. And even if you look at that one, even though I disagree 1,000%, if you could be 1,000%, that Noah's 3 children then fathered the rest of the world, it would have been out of Japheth's lineage that you would get the Mesoamericans, and not Ham's lineage, which is the Canaanites. So you would not have gotten that. It would have been Japheth and his kids, because they were the seafarers, spoke a different language. So sorry, but nah, that just doesn't work. The Canaanites did not come from Cain, nor did they come from Ham's children. In truth, the Canaanites came from a nomadic tribe that established themselves after the Bronze Age collapse, right before and during and after the Bronze Age collapse, as a nomadic group of people who then formed into a group after the Levant had fallen from the control of the Egyptians, and you had many different tribes that became a nation after that standpoint. So the Canaanites are most likely some menagerie of Assyrians, Shashus, and just other Levantian people who were living in that time frame, living near the coast, probably some Phoenicians and Philistines that merged together and became the Canaanites. But in no way were they coming from Canaan. And they certainly didn't come from Cain. So this is why I'm 50-50 on Billy Carson. But y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.